Hello? Many people have asked me why I do this, and I want to respond to that, and also to respond to Officer Paul Biesinger. He was the officer that came to my house and took the report on the shooting that occurred there, rather than asking if anybody was injured or anybody victimized. When he first got out of his car, he said that he heard that I was an activist. And then he went and did a poor investigation, to say the least. After he left, after taking a couple pictures and taking a little bit of my statement, he came back after I recovered the bullet casings between the two houses across the street that were directly in line with the direction the shooting occurred. He destroyed evidence and lied on the police report. I guess if they consider you an activist, that's how they treat you. But there's a few things that I've been involved in that might make me, in their eyes, look to be an activist. I know that when my tools were stolen out of my truck while I worked at the apartment complex doing maintenance, and I was in the on-call position for late night repairs, I reported the incident to the police, but I also on my own did a little bit of checking, and I was able to locate the individuals that had stolen my tools. In fact, I went over to a house on MLK, and while I was there, I kind of looked in the back of a pickup truck with probably about a dozen people in the driveway right there. While I was doing it, they confronted me. I was able to explain myself well enough that I was able to walk away without any issues. They did recognize me after the fact, and one of the people there told him that he ought to return my tools to me because I was right with who had stolen my tools. Later, 6 months or so, when Lansing City Police decided not to pursue these guys, another agency caught them, and after they were captured, I contacted the LPD to find out if they had recovered my tools or not. I got the short answer was, we'll call you when we're ready to go through what we recovered. I don't think anybody that lost any property was called. Most likely they sold that and garnered the profits for themselves, further victimizing the victims. That's what you get when you live in Lansing. The next time I really got into an issue with anything was right after I moved and bought a house. I got a phone call from the police union asking for a donation, and I was still trying to recover from the thousands of dollars that I went into different collection agencies for the assault that I incurred, where the Detective Guild decided to play the race card and blame me for being a racist, for getting beat up, assaulted, having my nose broken, and the officer originally let me go to urgent care on my own, but as soon as he found out I had health insurance through my job, he demanded I take a ambulance that he called. If I had tried to drive myself, he told me he would arrest me for driving impaired. I wasn't impaired. Anyways, I I was nice enough to donate $30 to the police union, even though I was financially in dire straits at the time. I support honest police. I feel that police are a necessary asset for any city. Uh, I support honest police, so I've got to make sure that I mention that part of it. Honest police go a long ways. Anyways, I donated $30, and then everything was fine and dandy, except for a couple months later, I get a phone call, and it's the same guy calling me. He wants another $30. In fact, he's got even a better idea. Me giving him my credit card or debit card information, and they just do a monthly donation out of my credit card. When I told him I couldn't afford that, he says, "You do want police protection, don't you?" I says, "Yeah, but I do believe I pay taxes for police protection. When I donate money for a cause, I'm doing it when I can afford it. I can't afford it right now." Then he told me that if I didn't donate money, I wouldn't get police protection. And then when I kind of got gruff with him, he told me, you know where I lived. At which time I said, "Well, if you know where I live, come on over here and I'll tell you no to your face. Don't ever call me again." I've had a number of phone calls from police unions wanting money. The thug tactic he tried to use on me, I don't believe in, and I did not donate any money to him and have not since. I do not believe that my losses have not been their concern, so their support hasn't been my concern. I do not trust the LPD, and when I get done, I think I can prove pretty well that justice only comes to people with money, people who have family in high positions, or somebody that has some kind of power or authority that can step in. I'm not saying you're going to walk away like Greg Neal Beaver did in Battle Creek after he had probably robbed a couple hundred places in the time that he lived there. But his dad was a police lieutenant, so every time he'd get arrested for committing a crime, they'd just say, "Oh, come on, Greg, just tell us you did it, we'll let you go." And that's what they do. They let him go. He'd committed easily a couple hundred crimes, and never one time did he go to prison for any of it. So just remember that when they're sending your family to prison for the slightest infraction, they're letting their kids go for breaking in houses, buildings, safes, you name it. And they're walking away, getting away with it free and clear. And not only are the police involved in that cover up, but lawyers, prosecutors, judges, they all kind of fall in line and look out for each other's kids in that manner. That's a whole nother story. We'll get into that later. I happen to have had a very interesting life, and it's going to be very entertaining explaining a lot of what I've gone through. Anyways, I didn't donate any money after that, so you never have to worry about that. I know that Sherry got a ticket one time, or I'm sorry, I got a ticket one time. It was after Sherry got arrested for a charge that she had prior to meeting me, and I had gone to see her in the jail, and while I was headed that way, I had the Alero, which was a car that I bought for Sherry. I had it on cruise control at 70 miles an hour, And so as I'm going 127 towards Mason, I see this little dot in the back. And I'm thinking, hope that ain't a state cop. But let me go back a day. What had happened was, it was on Sherry's birthday. We were all celebrating. She was looking, having a lot of fun. She was outside soaking wet. And I got a knock on the door. When I answered the door, it was a female state police officer. She told me that there was an emergency involving one of Sherry's children and that she needed to talk to Sherry about it. That sounded reasonable. You know, I was concerned, so I went and got Sherry. And when Sherry came to the door, the officer said, "Hey, come on out here to the street. I got to talk to you in private about this." As soon as she got her out in the street, she put handcuffs on her. She was actually there to pick her up on a warrant that hadn't been really looked at for a long time. It wasn't a serious charge or anything like that. But she went out of her way to come to my house. And I'm sorry, when you come to my house and lie, and every time cops have come to my house, it's always started with a lie. I don't know why they have to lie, but she lied, and she was there to actually arrest her for that warrant. My response was something that very few people will ever see. It brought out my anger. I put my finger in her face, probably not even an inch from her face, and I said, "You ain't nothing but a pig bitch, a lying pig bitch. Come to my motherfucking house and lie to me, you lying pig bitch." And I did that probably for about 2 or 3 minutes until she finally got Sherry in the car and carted it away. So I was probably not in the best of moods as I'm going down 127 to go visit Sherry in the jail. And I said, "Man, I hope that ain't a state cop behind me because he's going, whoever it is, I'm doing 70 and this guy is just a little dot and I'm not even a mile from my turnoff and it seems like he's going to catch up to me." Sure enough, it was a state cop. He didn't have his lights on. He was probably doing 90, maybe even more. Okay, well, you know, he's a cop. I'm not going to argue with him. But as he went by, you know, I just, anger from the day before just boiled up a little bit. And so I gave him my displeasure by sticking my finger in his direction. You know, I gave him the bird. I gave him the bird a few times. And he's seen it. He damn near wrecked himself pulling off the highway to the side to get behind me to pull me over. Right at my exit, no less. Just a minute longer and it wouldn't have happened. Anyways, he wrote me, he couldn't write me a ticket for speeding or anything because I wasn't speeding, but Sherry had done something I told her not to. She hung a damn air freshener from the mirror. And it was an air freshener I got from a customer at work, and he wrote me a ticket for the air freshener. Me, I'm sorry, I'm the wrong kind of guy to do that to because I will research something, and that's what I did. I went and I got my camera and I went around to different police departments, and sure enough, almost every personal vehicle owned by the city police and the sheriff's department had things hanging from mirrors. When I was at the Cedar Street and what is that, Cedar and Holmes, whatever that is, where the old school is, when the police had the back parking lot area, I was towards the back parking lot. It was all fenced in, and I was taking pictures of their vehicles. And I just come across this small black sports type car that looked like it had Hawaiian lays all the way across the front of it. It was just unbelievable. I couldn't believe that anybody could see through the front windshield. Along with all the other vehicles that had things hanging from it, I took pictures. By the time I got done, I had about 30 pictures from all the police departments. And well, I was taking this one picture, this police officer pulled in, come flying down the street and pulled in right to the sidewalk, and it was a short black female officer, and she had her hair, it was kind of long, and she come marching up towards me, and another guy come running out the back door, and she says, I got this covered, telling him to go back, and she was going to take care of it. So she comes and she confronts me, and she gets in my face, who are you? This is just somebody on a public sidewalk minding his own business. To that, she says, well, I want to know why you took a picture of my vehicle. Well, what's wrong with taking pictures? Is there a law against that? She says, well, we've had a lot of problems in our parking lot. I says, I find that hard to believe. It only took a few moments for you to show up and that officer to come out the back door. And so I'm sure you have the place all camered up. She says, well, I need to know who you are now. I'm giving you a direct order. Okay, I've provided my ID. Then she says, why was you taking pictures? She says, well, I got a ticket for having something hanging from my mirror. And she looked at me and says, well, who wrote it? And she said it in a way where it was like, I tell her which LPD officer wrote that ticket, and she'd make sure that it went away. That didn't happen. I told her it was a state cop that wrote it, and when I said that, it just deflated her. You know, she couldn't fix the problem. So I left, but she had my name, and she had my address. She had my information, so she kind of was probably thinking that, oh yeah, I'm going to cause the police problems. I got a ticket, they should get tickets because they're a regular, crime spree when it comes to stuff hanging from mirrors. So I went to the Secretary of State. I found out where that law was about a paragraph in a book that was that thick. And it mostly dealt with who you couldn't write that ticket. You couldn't write that ticket to somebody that was from out of state, stuff like that. When I went to court, actually it wasn't court, I went to like a pre-trial with the prosecutor. And I took my pictures with me, and I took the paperwork I had with me, and I was gonna, fight it, say, hey, what the hell? Why should it be for me and not for somebody else? Or if I was found guilty, I'd just pay it. It was just one of them things, and I thought I'd fight it because it was, I think, some points included also. When I showed up, I was the first one in line. There was a long line down the hallway in Marshall, in Mason, a long line of people with their lawyers and stuff. And when I sat down, the female looked at me, prosecutor, and says, do you have a lawyer? And I said, no. Do I need one? She says, oh, no, we can handle this. It'll be real easy. This nothing real big. Okay. So I kind of, let her say her thing, and she's more or less saying, well, just plead guilty to it and all this other good shit. And I said, well, why should I plead guilty to it? Because she kept saying that it was in the book that what every driver must know, or little pamphlet that they give out to Secretary of State, but it's not in there anywhere. And I showed her that, and I showed her where the only place it is in that book at the Secretary of State's. And then I told her, I says, how can you hold me to this standard here when there isn't a cop in this county that holds to that standard? And when I said that, this older gentleman at another table behind me jumps up, and I don't know if he didn't have teeth or his teeth were loose or what, but he went to pounding on the table real hard, and I was getting spit on as he was yelling at me, saying there isn't an officer in this county that would break that law. So I'm kind of paping myself out, and I pull out my stack of pictures, and I said, well, according to these pictures, there isn't a cop in this county that doesn't follow that law. Well, that made him change his tune just like that. As soon as I said that, he says, well, let me correct myself. he pounds the table again and he says, I don't give a fuck what any of these fine, outstanding officers do in this county. They can do whatever the fuck they want to do. Do you have a problem with that? You know, they always like to say, do you have a problem with that? Well, yeah, I did, but I really couldn't say anything about it because taking this and fighting it meant that I was missing work where I have a lot of responsibilities. And it was costing me more money in lost wages than the cost of the ticket. And I could see I wasn't going to get anywhere unless I took it to court. And if it wasn't for my job, I would have took it to court and I would have made that old guy eat his words because is that the American way? Anyways, I pled guilty to a lesser charge and didn't get any points. I think it was a little bit more money and just got out of there. When I went to pay the ticket, I says, oh, boy, there isn't much justice in this county. And when I said that, some cop walked up and he said, you say another thing negative and I'm going to arrest you. Really? I'm standing at the window to pay a ticket. I says, when did we become Nazi Germany? That's what I said to him, because that was the wrong response. I wasn't intruding on anybody. I was just making an offhand remark to myself that he took it as a personal attack on him. After a short period of time, when I realized there wasn't a lot of police protection and police were doing things that on police reports, lying on them, destroying evidence, stuff like that, I went to a city council meeting. I met John Pollard there. He became a very good friend of mine. In fact, I used to talk to him quite often because I used to go and mow a lawn for Carolyn Stauffer. She lived on the corner of Boston and Blair, and John just lived a few houses down from Carolyn. So a lot of times on the weekend when I go over there and deal with Carolyn's, I'd take Sherry with me, and sometimes she'd do all the mowing. I go down there and talk to John for an hour and a half in his driveway and talking about the different things that to try to make the city better and the people's lives a little bit better. John was a very good person. He had a lot of empathy for other people, and I really respected that. And he's sorely missed. In his case, a good die young. But I went to the city council meeting. I didn't bring up any of the issues that were I was dealing with. I did bring up instead the fact that I drove down Kalamazoo one day and I stopped to buy a pop at that little grocery store in Kalamazoo. And when I got out of my vehicle, by the time I got to the door, 3 different guys at 3 different vehicles squat down there doing drug deals all looked at me and said, hey, you looking for something? No. I'm not a drug addict, and I am really against drugs as far as the dangerous drugs that are destroying our country and our society. I don't approve of those drugs at all. To the point where I used to give a guy a ride to work. His name was Andrew. Maybe I was an activist with Andrew. Anyways, he got involved. You know, he lived in Lansing. I'd pick him up in the morning, take him to work, and I started to seeing different mood changes in him and stuff like that. And it got to the point where I confronted him about drug use. I told him, I know that you're doing crack, and I told him that if you don't give it up, you're not going to be able to work here. You can't be a crackhead and work here. And I told him, let me know who it is that's selling you the crack. I'll crack his head with a baseball bat. That's what I think about crackheads. Crack their heads with a baseball bat. they offer nothing to society. Zero. So I told Andrew that, and then boy, for almost like 4 days in a row, it was no show. I'd go to his house, beat on his door, you know, before work, after work, trying to get a hold of him, find out what he was doing. And what was going on is lost his relationship with his girlfriend. The crack had become his sole desire in life, and he had the drug dealer staying right there with him in his apartment, feeding him crack, taking his money and giving him crack. Been going on for about 3 or 4 days, and then all of a sudden, when Andrew was awake and the drug dealer was sitting at the table, he grabbed his baseball bat and went and cracked him on the head. And kind of knocked him out for a minute. When he came to, Andrew freaked out and all on the drugs, he stabbed himself repeatedly. When I got involved, it was after I found out Andrew was in the hospital. I went up there and talked to his mother and his girlfriend, and I was able to find out who the drug dealer was, and it was somebody that we knew, and we told everybody that he have no memory of what happened. Told Andrew, you don't remember what happened, and the drug dealer don't remember what happened. No statement. Nobody went to jail. Andrew was lost his job, moved back to his where his mom and dad lived, and was staying with them last I knew. That was quite a few years ago. I'm hoping that he did recover from the crack addiction and get his life back together. And then there was that time when I first moved to the house, when we first bought the house. And I was going to go to the Village Party store right there on Mifflin and Kalamazoo. To get there, I was going to cut through the car wash on the corner of Francis and Kalamazoo. On the way there were bushes in front of me, and as soon as I got up to the bushes, I heard somebody say, "I'm not touching the nasty ass nigger." And then somebody else said, "I'll make the nigger get up." And I couldn't see through the bushes, so I stepped around the corner as the third one, the tallest of the three, says, "You got to kick the nigger harder than that." And he kicked him. And that's when I said, "What the fuck are you doing?" He was an unconscious black man in the middle of the parking lot. It was a bright sunny afternoon day. I would say probably a weekend because I wasn't at work. Seemed like it was probably around noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, something like that. The cops looked at me, and their look made me back away. I backed across the street to where the fish fry is now and stood in the parking lot over there. When they said, "Come over here," and stuff like that, I chose not to because I didn't feel safe around them. I didn't know what their intent was, other than I'd seen them kicking an unconscious man on the ground for no reason. And I feel maybe that they pinpointed where I lived because I just lived right a couple houses from there. And at that point there, I think I became a further target. There was a time where I answered the door and there was an officer standing at my door. Two more standing at the outside the gate on the sidewalk. I'd just gotten home from work. It was just after 5 o'clock. The asked the officer, "What can I do for you?" And he responded. He says, "Heard there's a commotion here." Commotion. I looked at him. I says, "I've just been here a couple of minutes, long enough to fill up a plate of food and sit down and turn on the TV." I turned around and looked at Sherry. I said, "Sherry, has there been a commotion here?" She said, "No, nothing's going on here." So I turned back around and looked at the officer. I says, "No commotion's here. Why are you knocking on my door?" He started hemming and hawing about another excuse of something as to, and I said, finally, I couldn't take it anymore. And he says, "Okay, come on. Why are you knocking on my door?" Point blank. Simple question. Well, then he looks at me all sheepish and he says, "Well, actually, we've seen you've got such a beautiful house here, and we just kind of figured that we could come and maybe get some information from you about your neighbor." Pointing to the house to the right of me. And when he said that, my reaction wasn't a good one, because they came to my door and they lied. I've been dealing with cops lying my entire life, and to have another cop come to my door and lie to me about why he's there just kind of blew my mind. And I told him, probably one of the few times I really got ignorant with a cop, I says, "Get the fuck off my porch. If you want to know about my fucking neighbor, go ask my fucking neighbor. Get the fuck off my porch." If he'd come to me honestly and asked me about my neighbor, I would have says, "He's a crack dealer. Piece of shit. Crack dealer. Likes to show off the little short barrel pistol he carries in his right front pocket. He's pulled it on a few people and stuck it in their face. Hadn't done that in the last week or so, because I went over there and I told him if I heard he did that again, I was going to stick it up his ass." Said it right to his face. No problem. I don't play guns. But they lied to me, so they didn't get the information. You got to start with the truth if you want to get somewhere. And then one day I got woke up by a cop knocking on the door. Jesus, what the hell are the cops up to? Knocking on my door early in the morning. It was a weekend, had to have been, because I was at home, probably a Sunday. It was a light drizzle outside. I had trees right in front of the house, so we didn't see a lot of the raindrops on the sidewalk and stuff like that. And the cop looks at me, he says, when I answered the door, he says, "It's raining outside." I says, "Yeah, I see that." He says, "Well, you got your flag outside?" I says, "Yeah, I do. Just a little drizzle, looks like it's going to stop pretty soon. I'm not too worried about it." He looked like he was offended by saying that. I was offended. Either it was the next day, it was either that day, the next day, or 2 days later. It was somewhere in that range when I came home and my flag was missing off my porch. The flagpole and the flag were both stolen off my front porch. And the flag had been my dad's. So I'm not too happy about that. Who do I think did it? I didn't know the LPD went around knocking on people's doors, but the LPD do a lot. I know I kind of made a stir when Venero was at a park, Verge. He went to a park and had to do with, I think, homeless people or something. Anyways, it was towards election time, and I could see in the darkness behind them, it was a film crew was there. They were videotaping it for TV, for the news. And this is where I seen it, I believe it was on a newsreel. I watched an officer take a Donald Trump sign and plant it in the park. I know I can't put no Trump signs or any political signs in the park. Yet here we have an officer, a uniformed officer, putting a sign in the middle of the park. He doesn't even live in the city of Lansing, most likely. And then I also, when I went to vote, I noticed all the Trump signs all around all of the different voting locations too. This was 2016 election time. And I know I didn't put no signs out like that. And most citizens know not to do it. But sure enough, there was an LPD putting a sign out in the middle of a park. I wonder who told him he could do that. I've done a lot of other stuff since I've been here. I've 3 different occasions. There was a woman's wallet and purse I found in the bushes behind the alley, behind my house. We were able to locate an individual. It was a man. He came and he said that it was his wife. I let Sherry give him the property back. There was no money in it or anything like that, but there was pictures and ID and stuff like that. The guy was very appreciative, and then he told us that they'd moved to Lansing, and his wife met some people, and they got her involved in drugs. And last time he knew, she was walking up and down Kalamazoo as a prostitute, and he'd done everything he could to try to bring her home, and loved her with all his heart, and he didn't know what to do. By the time he got that, he hadn't seen her in a while, and he was concerned for her welfare, and no way of getting a hold of her, no way of finding out where she was. I bet you that guy wishes he'd never moved to Lansing. Just like all of the different homicide victims wish they had moved to Lansing. Or the people that committed the homicides, because their lives are fucked the rest of their lives. They have nothing to look forward to but jail bars. That was one that I found. I found another one in the middle of Pennsylvania and Kalamazoo, right there in the intersection. As I was leaving the QD there, it was late at night. I seen something in the middle of the intersection. I said, you know, that almost looks like a wallet. And sure enough, it was a woman's wallet. I figured she'd put it on top of the roof of her vehicle, and when she went to it, and when she left, she forgot it, and it came off her roof in the intersection. Anyways, we were able to locate her, and that one I let Sherry return to her with all the money and everything still intact. There's no pleasure returning something where everything's missing. Then when I lived at the apartment complex, I was given an employee that worked at McDonald's. I was working at McDonald's then up on Cedar Street. We stopped at the Meijer because they wanted to cash a check and do some shopping, and when I was in the parking lot, I noticed a purse. I took the purse home, and the next day I went through it, and I was able to find a marriage certificate from the 1950s and a rent receipt from, it was like 15 years old. I called the apartment complex, and sure enough, that person still lived there. I was amazed. Anyways, a couple hours later, some guy shows up. I was working in the apartment complex then too. I was working 2 jobs. And they had me return the purse to them. They could have done that themselves at the office, but when I went and retrieved the purse, and it was a young guy that came and got it, he looked up at me when I handed it to him, and he says, "Is everything still in it?" I said, "Yeah, all the money's still in it, and food stamps and everything else. There's probably about $100 in food stamps and almost $100 in cash." He never said thank you. Most people don't when you return their property, but I don't do it so much. I do it for their benefit, but I do it for my benefit too. It's the right thing to do. Anytime you find something, return it to the people that lost it. It makes a big difference in your life. So why am I doing all of this? Why am I fighting the system like this? Well, I have a lot of losses. When I was had a PPO on me and I could not be at home and Sherry was there, my garage got broke into. Police showed up and said that they left a sweater and a hammer and screwdrivers, pry bar. They left all that behind the garage. And the police said that it was an inside job. Somebody with a key had to do it. And Sherry didn't have a key. When I couldn't be at home, she immediately contacted Mark and gave Mark the only key that she had. So only 2 people had keys to my garage, and that would have been Mark and myself, Mark Coleman Jr., to be precise. And when the cops said it was an inside job, and the problem with that is, it was an inside job, but it wasn't done by me, and it wasn't done by Sherry. I know that when Sherry called the police, they turned around and tried to tell her that I did it. When Sherry was in the hospital and trying to recover from whatever happened to her, more drama due to the police, they tried to tell me that she did it. I knew for a fact she didn't do it. You don't call the police if you did something, number one. Number two, Mark specifically told me that he had her key, so she had no way to get in the garage. And that just left one person. That would have been Mark Coleman Jr. And I later confirmed with a couple different things that one thing that I had seen and one thing that I recovered that kind of pinpoint to Mark was the one that robbed my garage. The police didn't write a police report, didn't investigate, didn't do anything. I'm out thousands of dollars in tools and equipment. I lost a great deal. Not only did I lose all of that, but a lot of the information I had to pursue these claims against the lawyer and other individuals were stolen out of my house. Somebody specifically would have took them only if they knew their importance. You don't take something that's just laying there thinking it's no. They took it because they knew what it was. Now the question is was it something that somebody asked them to take? Like a lawyer? We'll have to figure that part out. I also know that Sherry, being still involved in drugs, had taken some of my property and pawned it to a drug dealer by the name of Smooth that lived on New York Avenue. Hmm. There's something for you to think about, crack dealers. I went to the neighbors of Smooth on each, all the way around him and stuff like that to find out what kind of an individual he was. The one people that lived right next to him said that they couldn't even go on their front porch anymore because they blow drug smoke at them. That, and they threatened them with their dogs. People across the street said that they had to call the cops to recover property that they'd come over and stolen from their yard. There was nobody I could find that had a good word to say about anybody in that house. The house was an eyesore. It had traffic in and out constantly. There was a small grade school just down the street from it. The question is why do the police pursue people that grow marijuana rather than the people that actually destroy the city, that being crack dealers? And I was told by the electrical inspector for the city of Lansing, who said that, acknowledged also along with police and a lot of other people, that the grow ops I had built was the best one that they had encountered after roughly 100 raids on houses. And I asked him, I says, why do they concentrate on people with marijuana and not the people with crack? And he says, well, you go raid a crack house and you got broken down furniture, maybe a gun that may or may not work, some crack you can't do anything with. But you go raid the guy that's growing the marijuana, he's going to have money, he's going to have equipment, he's going to have stuff. And it's all about the profit. It's all about what the cops can get and sell and keep. I'd understand that when they raided my house and they took truckloads of property of mine, even after the prosecutor chose to drop all charges completely, across the board, about a dozen of them, that upset the cops. They still wanted to keep all my property, even though all the charges had been dropped. It took the prosecutor stating on record, and I've got a piece of paper that states this, that we had committed no crime. They had no justification to keep our property. That's the only way I got my property back. Plus another $500 to my scandalous lawyer. So I'm trying to recover losses from the LPD not doing their job. From the police report that never got written when my garage was robbed and my house was robbed. I've recovered a lot, but I do have injuries from when my nose got broke. I will have a terrible stomach upset to the point where it'll put me on my knees. And as soon as I sneeze, it goes away. It's like instantly. I can stand back up. I'm totally recovered. But that happens on somewhat of a regular basis. Maybe every once a week, every couple of weeks, something like that. About 2 years ago, I was having a bad one. I was actually hugging the toilet because I didn't know if I was going to puke or sneeze or what. And when I did sneeze, a big old bloody clump came out. And even though I still have this issue, that kind of really shocked me when a large clump of blood, or I don't know what it was, because it ended up in the toilet, and I don't pick anything out of toilets. I'm sorry. I flushed it, whatever it was. So I got that I deal with. when the cops raided my house, I was on the front porch. Sherry was in the driveway. I just turned around to go back in the house when I heard the noise, and I swung back around like that, and I whiplashed myself. I've got some days I've got real limited mobility. Today I'm pretty good, not too bad. But I've got to do exercises. I did go to a therapist for a while, but that was $60 every time I walked in the door. I was fortunate enough that my employer repaid me that money. That was $600 I couldn't afford, and I really can't afford to go back there anymore. So I've got those issues. I can show you a ton of pictures of Sherry and me before the raid. Happiest couple in the world. Beautiful young lady. She's got goals. And you got her back in the crack again. And it's been downhill ever since. You got to understand a bit about me. When Sherry's mom was on her deathbed, when Sherry's dad was on his deathbed, I told them both that I would care for Sherry. I'd make sure that nothing ever happened to her. Sherry has issues. I've got her paperwork on it, and it's something that we need to discuss with the mayor, because what the cops did, getting her back on the drugs, exacerbated, made everything that much more worse, and she still hasn't recovered. I feel responsible for her. I take care of her, but I'm gone 11 hours a day to work. Most often I work 7 days a week. And when I'm not working at work, I've got other things I've got to do just to make ends meet. I did have to file bankruptcy because of all of the drama that I went through, all of the break-ins. There was a lot of break-ins. We're going to be discussing a lot of break-ins. So I'm trying to recover from my losses, and I'm trying to get it so Sherry can get the help she needs, the medical help, the psychological help. You guys put her in a really bad situation, and your only answer was you're going to put her in prison. You don't seem to realize that behind her is a brick wall, and that's me. I'm a brick wall. If you knew anything about me, if you ask anybody anything about me, they'll tell you that I'm honest. In fact, I'll tell you this. In my entire life, every cop I've ever talked to will say that John, he's the most honest individual I ever met. Honest about everything he says. I am. So I worry about Sherry. You did bad. You guys did really bad. And I want to make people aware of the LPD and the officers that did wrong by me. The ones that lied on police reports, the ones that allowed the bad guys to get away, the ones that are just no good. According to Dunnings, there's only a couple of them that are good. Of course, this is while he was picking up Stephanie Kirby. We'll be getting to her later. I got a picture of her as a child on a porch. Well, I bet you her parents never thought that she'd grow up to be the prosecutor's prostitute. Sadly, I think from what I've heard, she's deceased now from drugs. Good job, Lansing. Another success story. Sad. So I want people to be aware of what the cops are willing to do. What they did to me doesn't mean they ain't going to try it again and do it to somebody else. The only advantage I had was I had the money to fight them. One other thing I'll mention 2 weeks before we got raided, Sherry told me everything there was about Samuel Funches, except for where he lived, or this would have never gotten to that point. She wouldn't tell me where he lived because he carried a gun on him, and he threatened my life repeatedly. All he talked about was cutting my brakes. And I want to know what all drugs you gave her besides the crack, because some of the, I haven't put the videos out, but she's not in her own right mind. The things that she talks about are things that never happened. Other people might have been victimized by the LPD. Maybe some of this information will aid them in overcoming anything that the LPD is trying to do to them. I know that cops have lied, and if you're a cop and you lie, you can't be a cop. Especially if you put it on a police report. I read some of the reports from the raid, and one of them, I think it said something about, I told the cops that we were selling drugs. I never said that to any cop when they raided our house. Not one time. Yet I seen it on the piece of paper in the cop's notes. And you know, the sad part about that is he'd be up on the stand. Let me look at my notes here. Oh yeah, he said right here when I was interviewing him at his house after we raided his house, he said, yeah, he sells drugs there in the river. No. And the sad part is all them people in the jury would look at that cop in his nice clean uniform and stuff and look at me as a piece of shit and say that, yeah, guilty in sin. Just listen to the cop, he wouldn't lie. No, cops lie. You read it in the fucking newspaper every day. Cops lie. What are we going to do about that? Well, the ones that lie need to be held accountable. The ones that lie need to find a job at McDonald's. They shouldn't be cops. Because if they'll lie, they'll do a lot of other stuff beyond that. And that I realize that the politicians have got their noses up cops' ass. You look at their flyers that they send out at the election time, every one of them says that I've been supported by the police union, I'm supported by the LPD. Wait a minute, these people don't even vote for you. They can't vote for you. They don't live in the city of Lansing. Yet you're going to shit on the people that do vote for you, that do live in the city of Lansing, and support people that are just lying. And call that justice? Who the hell wants to live in a city like that? So yeah, in a way, I guess I'm encouraging people to find someplace else to live. I moved out of Lansing, and believe it or not, life has gotten so much better. I actually get an extra hour or two of sleep a night. We never had any sleep living in Lansing. We were just waiting for the next cop or crook to come wreck our lives a little bit more. You know, it's interesting because I told Sherry after moving into the house on Francis, after a month or so, I looked at her and I said, well, I don't know who's going to get me first, the cops or the crooks. Turned out to be both of them. So don't think the cops are going to arrest the crooks. And don't think that just because you've been a victim, they give a shit. They don't. The only way you're going to get justice is if you have a lot of money and a good lawyer. In my case, I had a corrupt lawyer that was just good enough to get the information out to get the charges dropped. But him and I, we've got a reckoning still. And his story's coming up. Edward Zaney and his brother Simon. So I have some interesting stuff to show you as far as texts and a lease and different work I did for him. Yeah, Ed. When this is all said and done, I plan on sending a copy of all of this information to the Attorney General in the hope that maybe I can get their attention and get a real investigation, because I don't think the mayor wants to investigate anything. He just wants it to be status quo. He didn't care that I was a victim. He won't care when you're a victim either. He'll just sit up there like he does and just pretend like you don't exist as you're telling him what you went through, like I do at all the city council meetings, which I plan on keeping on going to. I do this in honor of different people: Steve Harry, John Pollard, people that really give a shit about other people, because City of Lansing, they don't care about you. They just try to destroy people a little bit at a time. So, now you know why. Thank you.